My name is Caitlin Scott, and I'm a 42-year-old emergency room nurse from Portland, Oregon. What I'm about to share with you is my near-death experience's testimony of what happened when Jesus showed me the shocking truth about prayer. I literally saw and experienced something that completely changed my understanding about prayer, faith, and the very nature of reality itself. But before we start, please let me know where you're listening from. It will be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like and comment on what you thought about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other on this channel. Enjoy listening. It happened on February 14th, 2021, and I remember that day with crystal clarity. It was a particularly brutal winter morning in Portland, with freezing rain coating everything in a treacherous sheet of ice. I was working the night shift at Providence Portland Medical Center, and we had been overwhelmed with weather-related accidents all night. By 6 a.m., I was exhausted but decided to stay an extra 2 hours to help with the transition to the day shift, knowing they would be short-staffed due to the weather. I finally left the hospital at 8:15 a.m. The freezing rain had turned to snow, and I was looking forward to getting home to my warm bed. I remember calling my daughter Emma, who was away at college in Seattle, to check if she was still coming home that weekend. That was the last thing I remember before everything changed. Later, I learned that a delivery truck had lost control on the ice just 2 blocks from the hospital. The driver had tried to avoid hitting a pedestrian and ended up sliding sideways across 3 lanes. My car was caught in the impact, crushed between the truck and a concrete barrier. The irony wasn't lost on me. After spending 12 hours saving others in the ER, I became a trauma patient myself, being rushed back to the same hospital where my own colleagues would fight to save my life. According to the medical records, I was clinically dead for 9 minutes and 23 seconds. My heart had stopped, and despite multiple attempts at resuscitation, my body showed no signs of life. But what happened during those 9 minutes was more real than anything I've experienced in my 42 years of life. The moment of death wasn't what I expected. There was no tunnel of light, at least not in the way near-death experiences are typically described. Instead, it felt like every cell in my body suddenly expanded into infinite space. The pain from the crash vanished instantly, replaced by a sensation of profound peace and clarity that defies earthly description. It was as if I had spent my entire life watching a movie in black and white, and suddenly everything burst into colors I didn't even know existed. I found myself in what I can only describe as a dimension of pure consciousness. The space around me wasn't empty. It was alive with what looked like countless threads of light, each pulsing with its own rhythm and intensity. These threads wove together to form patterns more complex and beautiful than anything I'd ever seen, and somehow I understood that I was witnessing the actual fabric of reality itself. That's when he appeared. I knew immediately it was Jesus, though he looked nothing like the paintings and statues I'd grown up with. He was pure light, yet I could perceive his form clearly. His presence radiated such overwhelming love that I began to weep, though I had no physical body to produce tears. When he spoke, his words didn't come through ears but resonated directly within my consciousness. "Caitlin," he said, and in that one word, I felt completely known and understood. "You've been chosen to witness what few have seen, because your understanding needs to grow, and through you, others will learn the true nature of prayer." Jesus then guided me closer to what appeared to be a vast cosmic interface. Imagine the most advanced command center you could think of, but made entirely of living light. "Watch," he said, directing my attention to the threads of light I had noticed earlier. "These are prayers, every prayer being offered across all of time and space." I watched in amazement as prayers manifested as different colors and intensities of light. Prayers of praise appeared as golden streams that seemed to strengthen the very fabric of reality. Prayers for healing showed up as intricate patterns of green and blue energy that directly influenced physical matter. Prayers for guidance manifested as purple ribbons of light that created new pathways of possibility. "Many of my children have forgotten the true power of prayer," Jesus explained. "They see it as merely asking for favors, but prayer is actually participation in the act of creation itself. When you pray, you're not just sending messages to heaven, you're actively engaging with the quantum fabric of reality." He showed me how different types of prayers created different effects. I watched as a mother's prayer for her sick child generated waves of healing energy that directly influenced cellular regeneration. I saw how prayers of gratitude created ripples of positive change that extended far beyond the person praying. Most amazingly, I witnessed how prayers could combine and amplify each other. "This is why I told my disciples, 'Where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them,'" Jesus explained. Collective prayer creates a resonance that can literally reshape reality. "Watch this." He showed me a situation where a group of people were praying for peace in a conflict zone. Their combined prayers created a massive network of golden white light that began influencing the consciousness of people in that area. I watched in awe as their prayers literally altered brain chemistry, reducing aggression and increasing empathy in key decision makers. But then Jesus showed me something that brought tears to my spirit: the prayers that were weak or ineffective. These appeared as dim, scattered lights that barely penetrated the spiritual atmosphere. "Why are some prayers so weak?" I asked. "Look closer," he instructed. I saw that the weakest prayers came from several sources: prayers offered without real faith, prayers that were just empty repetitions of words, and prayers that were entirely self-focused without consideration for God's will or the greater good. The most powerful prayers, Jesus explained, share certain characteristics. They are offered with complete faith, aligned with my Father's will, and come from a place of genuine love and concern for others. These prayers become arrows of light that pierce through all barriers and create real change in the physical world. He then showed me something that left me in absolute awe, a kind of spiritual DNA structure made of light, which he explained was the pattern of all possible answers to any given prayer. Prayer doesn't change God's mind, he said, but it does change what's possible within the framework of free will and divine law. When you pray, you're not convincing God to act differently, you're participating in the process of creation itself. I watched as prayers actually altered these light structures, opening new possibilities and closing others. It was like watching a cosmic chess game where each prayer moved pieces in ways that affected countless other moves. Then Jesus showed me my own previous prayers. I saw how many times I had prayed without really believing, how often my prayers had been shallow or self-centered. But I also saw the times when my prayers had been pure and powerful, and how they had created real change in the world, even though I hadn't realized it at the time. Now, he said, let me show you something crucial. He directed my attention to what looked like a spiritual emergency room. Here, I saw how prayers during crisis situations were handled with particular urgency. I watched as prayers for people in accidents, health crises, and other emergency situations were processed and answered in real time. This is where you are right now, Jesus said, showing me my own body in the trauma room at Providence Portland Medical Center. I could see my colleagues working desperately to save my life. Dr. Thompson, who I'd worked with just hours before, was performing chest compressions. Lisa, my favorite charge nurse, was pushing medications through my fore. I could see the prayers of my family, friends, and even strangers creating a protective field of energy around me. Then Jesus showed me what he called the prayer repository, a vast library where every prayer ever offered was stored. But it wasn't just storage, it was a living database that continued to affect reality. I saw prayers from centuries ago still creating ripples of effect in the present day. Prayer, Jesus explained, exists outside of time as you know it. The prayers of those long dead can still influence the present, and the prayers offered today can reach backward and forward in time to create change. He showed me how the prayers of my grandmother, who had passed away when I was 12, had created protective pathways in my life that I had never recognized. But why show me all this? I asked. Why me? Jesus smiled, and in that smile, I felt infinite love and purpose. Because you understand both the physical and spiritual aspects of healing. As a nurse, you've seen both life and death, hope and despair. You've prayed for your patients, sometimes with faith, sometimes with doubt. You're perfectly positioned to help others understand the true nature and power of prayer. Then he showed me one final vision, a view of Earth from a spiritual perspective. I saw how every sincere prayer created lines of light that formed a beautiful, intricate web around the planet. This web, I realized, was literally holding things together, preventing chaos and destruction in ways I had never imagined. Remember, Jesus said, prayer is not just communication with God. It is participation in the ongoing act of creation. Every sincere prayer adds to this web of light that protects and sustains your world. When you return, you will help others understand this truth. As he spoke these words, I felt a pull back toward my body. The sensation was like being drawn through layers of reality, each one denser than the last. Just before I returned completely, Jesus gave me one final message. Tell them that their prayers matter more than they know. Tell them that when they pray, they are not shouting into an empty void but participating in the fundamental creative force of the universe. Tell them that prayer is not just asking for help, it is joining in the work of creation itself. With these words, I felt myself being drawn back to my physical body. The return to my body was jarring and painful. I gasped awake in the trauma room. My vital signs, which had been flat for over 9 minutes, suddenly stabilized in ways that defied medical explanation. The physical recovery was challenging. I had suffered multiple fractures, internal injuries, and a severe concussion. But even as I dealt with the pain and the long process of rehabilitation, I was filled with a sense of purpose and understanding that far outweighed my physical discomfort. Just as I was beginning to fully grasp the impact of my first near-death experience, Jesus granted me another profound encounter. It happened 3 months after my accident. And in those precious moments, I was once again lifted into that dimension of pure consciousness. This time, the transition felt familiar. When Jesus appeared, his presence was like greeting an old friend, yet his glory still moved me to tears of joy. "Welcome back, Caitlin," he said. "Let's see how your understanding has grown." He gestured to the space around us, and I gasped in wonder. I could now see something I hadn't noticed during my first visit. My own prayers were visible as distinct streams of light, different from how they had appeared before. "Your prayers have changed," Jesus said. "Watch." He showed me a replay of my prayers from before the accident. They were thin, uncertain streams of light, barely penetrating the spiritual atmosphere. Then he showed me my prayers after my first encounter with him. They had become focused beams of pure energy, creating powerful ripples in the fabric of reality. "Do you see the difference?" he asked. "Before, you prayed with hope. Now you pray with knowledge. Before, you asked for things to happen. Now you participate in making them happen." He then showed me something that brought tears of joy to my spirit: the prayer groups I had started at the hospital. I could see how our collective prayers created intricate patterns of light, weaving together to form powerful fields of healing energy that extended throughout the entire hospital. "Watch this," Jesus said, directing my attention to a specific instance. I saw myself praying with the family of a young car accident victim. Our combined prayers created a spectacular tapestry of light that enveloped the patient. I watched in amazement as this energy worked at the cellular level, accelerating healing in ways that had baffled our medical team. "You see," Jesus explained, "when you taught others to visualize their prayers as light, you were helping them align with the true nature of prayer. Even though they couldn't see what you saw, their faith in the process helped them participate more fully in the act of creation." He then showed me how the skeptics in our hospital had been affected. I could see their own encounters with unexplainable healings had created tiny sparks of faith, which were slowly growing into steady flames. "Doubt is not the opposite of faith," Jesus said. "It's often the beginning of a deeper understanding." Then he showed me something that took my breath away: a vast network of prayer energy connecting everyone I had taught about prayer. Each person who had learned from my testimony had begun creating their own streams of light, which in turn influenced others around them. It was like watching a divine chain reaction of awakening. "This is why I brought you back the first time," Jesus said. "Not just for your own understanding, but so you could help others understand. Every person you've taught to pray with new awareness has added to the web of light that sustains your world." He then revealed to me how the daily prayers in our hospital chapel had transformed the spiritual atmosphere of the entire building. The chapel had become a nexus of healing energy, with waves of light flowing outward to touch every patient, every family member, every staff member. "But there's more for you to understand," Jesus said. He showed me how my transformed understanding of prayer had affected my own healing process. I could see how my conscious participation in prayer had accelerated my recovery in ways that exceeded medical expectations. "Prayer is not just about asking for healing," he explained. "It's about actively participating in the healing process. When you pray for others now, you're not just asking me to heal them, you're joining with me in the act of healing itself." Then Jesus showed me something that filled me with awe: how the weekly prayer groups I had started were affecting the entire city of Portland. Each meeting sent out ripples of healing energy that extended far beyond the hospital walls, touching lives we would never know about in this earthly realm. "Remember," Jesus said, "prayer is not bound by time or space. The understanding you're sharing creates changes that reach both backward and forward in time, affecting not just the present moment but the entire tapestry of creation." As I felt myself being drawn back to my body once again, Jesus gave me one final message: continue to teach others what you've learned. Show them that prayer is not just words spoken in hope, but energy directed with purpose. Help them understand that they are not powerless observers in the universe, but active participants in the ongoing act of creation. The return to consciousness was gentler this time. When I opened my eyes in the recovery room, I was filled with an even deeper sense of purpose. This second encounter confirmed everything I'd learned in the first and added new layers of understanding about how prayer works and how to teach others to pray more effectively. Now, when people ask me about prayer, I can share not just what I learned in my first encounter, but how those truths have been proven and deepened through experience. I can show them not just the theory of prayer, but the practical results of praying with true understanding and purpose. Every day, I witness the power of what Jesus showed me, in the improved outcomes of our patients, in the transformed lives of those who've learned to pray with new awareness, and in the growing community of people who understand that prayer is not just asking for change, but participating in creation itself. Through these two encounters, I've learned that prayer is far more than a spiritual exercise. It is our direct participation in God's ongoing work of creation and healing. And as more people come to understand this truth, I see the web of light growing stronger, reaching further, and transforming more lives than I ever thought possible. For this second chance to learn and share these truths, I am profoundly grateful. And I know that every time we pray with this understanding, we're not just asking for God's help, we're joining in His work, becoming active participants in the miracle of creation itself.